wear high collar.
Exactly. Right. So yeah, that's the thing. Like, I just calm down. Like, I just read the story. Like, you would not. Just hear and the sheer fact that like it's so much. Yes. No, he just left.
Okay. I was going to forward him something.
Yeah, they actually were gonna offer him this job, and he had already like paid tuition for grad school, so it's a bummer. I want to say wherever like or something. Yeah, so it's a bummer, but yeah.
I was going to forward him something. I'll probably send it to you.
Okay, yeah, either one would be fine.
It's not to do with the
Okay. Yeah.
I'll pass it on to you.
Okay.
I'll copy both.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you. They're hiring. They're going to hire. They apparently have some paper and people like that, but I haven't heard
Very early on. Started to
and then she was talking about taking a job with a kid.
She had worked for a business trip.
Okay.
She tweeted about it last Monday. The last day.
Yeah, that's good for her, yeah. But I know she had emailed my editor and said he's paying her. And I told her, yeah, but then I wasn't sure.
So you like auditions?
You mean upstairs?
No.
Oh, like where I live, yes. You know what? I left my house at 9:40 today, and I got here at 9:44, so it's pretty awesome. So it's fun,
Think about driving.
Oh yeah, exactly. Right. It's just like I was getting so stressed out when I bought my car and before you know. Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it was great.
Right.
And I wish progress was really good.
How do you spell it?
All the time. See, it wouldn't be an issue if I only had totally like that every single day. I know that someone else was traveling in my car. Yeah, they're not weeks up in my car. Yeah, I know.
You're the progress though, right? Awesome. Okay. Just making sure. Glad you guys are here.
Yeah.
No budget for it?
Hello? Wait, where are you?
like some because they always like the older machine gets, the faster the rate
I know.
Morning, Stacy. How are you? Good. Oh, Charlie. Good morning, sir. Hi, Jenny. Good morning to you. Enjoy your summer? It's been a good summer.
So just want to remind everyone. At the DMV meeting. Oh my God. I am poor. I'm gonna keep talking to you guys for 25 minutes. And he kept saying, I want it on record. And like, the reporters in the room were just like staring at it. Really weren't writing any of it. Yeah. Anyway, I'll touch base with you again. I never listened to that. If that's. Right. We just took our youngest.
Oh, I got mine.
I don't know why
Look at that.
What? Oh,
Ready to call the Joint Committee on Children, Families, and Ways and Means to order. We call the roll.
Representative Katie. Representative Moon. Here. Representative Carpenter. Here. Representative Cross. Here. Representative Curtis. Representative Crippen. Here. Representative Ellington. Representative Deaton. Here. Representative Hubert.
Here.
Representative Kelly. Here. Representative Poe. Here. Representative Shaw.
We have 9 present from Ways and Means.
All right, we're going to call Children and Families to order. At this time, I want to welcome everyone in the audience who's in attendance today. This morning, we're going to spend 10 to about 12:30 just going over documents, getting our information out, and all getting on the same page with the information we have. We will recess from 12:30 to 2, and then we will come back in at 2 p.m. and then we are going to have witnesses. So with that, would you call the roll?
Representative Franklin,
Present.
Representative Neely,
Here.
Representative Beard,
Here.
Representative Bratton,
Here.
Representative Brown, here, Representative Gannon,
Present.
Representative Hafner, Representative Lauer,
Here.
Representative Meredith, here, Representative Newman, here, Representative Noor,
Here.
Representative Brinley.
Here.
All right. We have a quorum present. Thank everyone for their attendance.
All right, one other note is we welcome any media that's in the room. We have Progress Missouri here, News Channel 17, and Dignity Pictures here out in the audience, videotape. I want to start off by stating what the purpose of this committee is. There's been recent videos that indicate violations of federal law by Planned Parenthood and state law, and this joint committee is created with the purpose of determining if any state and federal law has been violated. And also, of those state and federal statutes that may have been violated, what state and federal funding could have been utilized in carrying out these illegal activities? Is there any documentation or reasonable evidence that Planned Parenthood or any other abortion clinic indicating questionable activities by their internal records or as documented by the Department of Health and Human Services? Are there current protocols of Missouri law sufficient to prohibit such illegal activity in Missouri as indicated by the released videos? And if not, is legislation necessary to address these problems? And are there any other matters that have been uncovered by this committee that should be investigated? So these are the questions that we're going to be investigating. I wanted to start off by reading a few brief excerpts from the first video. I have the complete transcript here, but I'm just going to pick a few short, brief ones. On page 11 of the transcript,
Booklet?
no, I don't know if we didn't necessarily hand out the transcript, but because it's pretty long, but you're free to look it up. I hope everybody on the committee has looked at the videos or read the transcript. And the date of this transcript is July 25th, 2014. And July 25th. Yes.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to inquire.
Proceed.
Can you explain who has documented this transcript and what are we reading? Where does this come from?
This is the transcript from the Center for Medical Progress. It was done on July 25th, 2014. This was Deborah, Senior Director of Medical Services at Planned Parenthood Federation of America. And then there is two actors posing as fetal tissue procurement company. All right, the buyer says on page 11, we need a liver and we prefer, an actual liver, not a bunch of shredded up pieces of liver. Yeah, the buyer, Planned Parenthood. It makes a huge difference. I say a lot of people want to deliver, and for that reason, most providers will do this case under ultrasound guidance, so they'll know where they are putting their forceps. So that's one excerpt that is a clear violation of state and federal law, if it is found out that's true. Also on page 19, the buyer says, right, Missouri, I think we mentioned that. Planned Parenthood. David Eisenberg is the medical director of St. Louis region. They do second trimester. They have a few extensive collaboration with all kinds of research. Pretty dynamic medical director. His name is David Eisenberger. I think that's definitely worth your while. And then on page 30, Washington University is also mentioned as a place that does research. That might be something to look into. As far as the statutes that I wanted to look at, so that's just a few brief excerpts. If you haven't read the transcript of the video, I certainly would recommend that the entire committee and anybody in the audience look at the complete transcript and the video. As far as potential violations of state law, I was going to have our analyst read a couple excerpts from state law.
Section 188.036, subsection 5, no person shall knowingly offer or receive any valuable consideration for fetal organs or tissue resulting from an abortion, provided that nothing in this subsection shall prohibit payment for burial and other final disposition of the fetal remains, or payment for a pathological examination, autopsy, or post-mortem examination of the fetal remains. Section 188.037, no person shall use any fetus or child aborted alive for any type of scientific research, laboratory, or other kind of experimentation, either prior to or subsequent to any abortion procedure, except as necessary to protect or preserve the life and health of such fetus or child aborted alive.
Section 194.275, except as otherwise provided in subsection 2 of this section, a person that for valuable consideration knowingly purchases or sells a part for any purpose, if removal of the whole body or apart from an individual is intended to occur after the individual's death, commits a felony, and upon pleading or being found guilty, is subject to a fine not exceeding $50,000 or imprisonment not exceeding 7 years or both. For purposes of this section, the term valuable consideration does not include the reasonable payments associated with the removal, transportation, implantation, processing, preservation, quality control, and storage of any part or a whole body.
All right, thank you. I will now hand it over to Chair Franklin to, I think some of her committee members can prepare a few things.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I checked with the committee members when I spoke with some of the folks. They had wondered, what are we going to do? What's the format? How's it going to happen? And I said, if there's a particular area that is of interest to you that you would like to pursue, and we can rely on you for specific information on that, please go ahead and do that. I've spoken with those individuals that, and at this time, Mr. Chairman, they're going to wait until we get to that topic to go ahead with the information that they have. All right, the first thing that we're going to look at is the settlement agreement that took place between the state of Missouri and Planned Parenthood of Missouri and Kansas. And I'm going to ask Representative Gann, and she has a short synopsis of the timeline. Would you mind to present that for us?
And where would you represent, where would you like to begin? At the settlement agreement or?
Yes. Talk about that timeline for the settlement agreement.
Okay. Okay,
There we go. I'll start here. In 2007, the Missouri General Assembly revised the definitional section of the Ambulatory Surgical Center, ASC, law to require that any abortion facility that performs or induces any second or third trimester abortions or 5 or more first trimester abortions a month must be licensed as ASC. Thus, every abortion clinic now had to be licensed as an ASC and comply with the DHSS regulations. Later in 2007, DHSS began enforcing the law under the Blunt administration. Planned Parenthood clinics in Kansas City and Columbia, Missouri then filed suit against the law. This case worked its way through state and federal courts, and in 2010, the state of Missouri, through Attorney General Chris Costner's office and Planned Parenthood, entered into a settlement agreement in the federal case. The settlement agreement deal reached allowed the Columbia facility to perform surgical abortions pursuant to the settlement agreement with the understanding that they would make modifications to the facility. The agreement also requires any new abortion clinic to be licensed as an ambulatory surgical center and to comply completely with the existing regulations. Since then, no new clinics have opened. The Planned Parenthood facility in Columbia continued performing abortions on and off until about 3 years ago when it stopped because it lost its position. The Kansas City facility never appears to resume doing abortions after the 2010 settlement agreement. As part of the settlement agreement, the Columbia facility had to undergo renovations, and the settlement agreement left untouched other aspects of Missouri regulating laws, such as requiring that abortion doctors have clinical privileges at a hospital within 30 miles, the 72-hour waiting period, and various informed consent requirements, etc. Last month, the Columbia facility announced that it was going to start doing abortions again with the hiring of a new physician, which began August 3rd. During last week's hearing in the Senate Interim Committee on the Sanctity of Life, committee members questioned DHSS Director Gail Basteline about whether the Columbia Clinic should have been issued an ASC license last month because it appears that the Columbia facility and/or the abortion doctor are not in compliance with the law, specifically regarding the physician not having clinical privileges at the local hospital.
Thank you very much. Now, are you prepared in any way to tell us what they needed to do or what the settlement agreement said that they needed to do in order to come into compliance?
Well, that's interesting. I made copies of the settlement agreement. It's pretty lengthy, but
do you have them enumerated in any way? That's all right, because I do have, I read it and I do have it. I don't want to. Okay, thank you. Okay, go beyond what you're prepared to do. Okay. Yes,
To inquire,
you may.
who does the inspections to make sure that they're at standard?
The Department of Health and Senior Services.
Under what lay is that? Who are the people that go to those facilities and make those inspections?
They have a survey team that goes out, and I this is kind of the skim at the top of the knowledge. Those are good questions for today. Yeah, they'll be here, and those are good questions for later today. Thank you. All right, so the settlement agreement was very well recapped there. It was between Planned Parenthood of Kansas and Mid-Missouri, representing DHSS at that time was Director Donnelly, and our top law enforcement individual at that time, the Attorney General Koster, was a part of reaching this agreement. This went to the federal court in the Western District of Missouri. So the agreement, that means, of course, that there was negotiation that took place. And in that negotiation process, Planned Parenthood dismissed their lawsuit, but agreed to really some structural changes within the Columbia facility. And I think in the Kansas City facility, there was perhaps a staff issue that was addressed there. So there are about, I'll go through the modifications. There was construction modifications that needed to be completed in 16 months. There were concerns about, I am so sorry, I can't hardly see this. Let me get it out of here. To meet the needs of the sterilization and soil rooms, sprinklers, there would be a final inspection to take place to make sure that those were taken care of. At that time, it did not perform surgical abortions, and if it wanted to, it needed to make the changes to comply with the area. They could do the medical abortions at that time. Another area of interest was that the state of Missouri had to pay, and I don't have the clarifications on this, but they had to pay $80,000 to the Columbia Center, and it looks like $65,000 to the Kansas City Center as part of the agreement of the suit. I think that the issues here are that it was important. It seemed to be important to get the facility open. There were changes made, and I do have those. The changes that were required to be made were that the door widths needed to be modified in order for a gurney to be able to get into the procedure room or the recovery room. They needed to have the fire extinguishers relocated. There needed to be a sprinkler system. They were given basically a waiver for the dimensions of the procedure room. They were given a waiver on the requirement that there would be 2 changing rooms, 1 per sex. They were able to go with unisex. They were given a waiver on the lighting. And they were given a waiver on where a patient's belongings would be kept while they were having a procedure. They were given a waiver on the counseling room, on the area in which the scrubbing in for the procedure was to take place, the sterilization room. I don't know what this is, positive air pressure. And they needed to have a separate area for items that were soiled, and they needed to have a constant exhaust in those areas. And these are variances from ambulatory surgical centers, and that takes place in the Columbia office. In Kansas City, it looks like that they needed to have the completion of their quality control agreement that wasn't on hand. So, you know, kind of in a broad and all those things are listed in the settlement agreement, and they're available for anyone to view that that wants to. Let's see. So the settlement agreement basically was between Planned Parenthood of Kansas and Missouri on the Columbia facility. It primarily dealt with the structure, the construction, how the facility was set up. In order to use that facility, that footprint, they had to receive basically waivers to be able to do that, different from other ambulatory surgical centers. And with that, then they were able to go forward, and it cost the state of Missouri the $80,000 in Columbia, the $65,000 in Kansas City. And, you know, kind of the question is, you know, is that really taking care of the quality and the safety for individuals who use that facility in the state of Missouri? Yes. Representative Lyon, you may.
The settlement agreement, as I heard you say, is just between Planned Parenthood in Kansas City and Planned Parenthood in Columbia. It has no effect on Planned Parenthood in St. Louis. True or false?
I did not see St. Louis mentioned. I think that you're accurate.
Thank you.
Okay. Is that right?
Yes.
Representative Hickman, do you have a question?
No, thank you.
Okay, so the settlement agreement then allowed the facility to open there after they had made the modifications and they received the proper inspections. So is there anyone that has questions about the settlement agreement? Okay. Representative Beard.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm just wondering, do we know what that money was paid for? What was the compensation for from the state of Missouri?
I sure do. It was paid for the attorney fees that both Columbia and Kansas had to pay. Yes, Representative Allen.
To inquire,
You may.
Madam Chair. So this settlement was in what year?
2007?
Oh,
2010.
okay, because after Attorney General Coster was in. Okay, and then, so maybe this is a different scenario, and you may be moving on to what I'd like to point out, but in 2013, I was contacted about the St. Louis, the Forest Park Abortion Center, Planned Parenthood. And I brought in Gail Vasterling and Celeste Hartgrave is a person within Health and Senior Services. And I was told at that point that there was another suit going on. So I was given no support, and that suit sounds like that was very similar to this 2011 suit of the quality and the issues. And at that point, there had been individuals with pictures of, I would assume, women, individuals being taken out on gurneys covered with sheets, put in an ambulance without a red light, so maybe they weren't in a hurry. And that assumption could have been that, you know, the worst for the woman. Also, we may get a runaround because some of what I was told at that time too was some of these inspections which had not been occurring. I was also directed to the City of St. Louis Health Department. So as we move forward and ask some of these questions, there may be some challenging of who's responsible for what. And just to inform the committee that you know, early on we were blocked from information based on being told there were other suits in progress. I don't know if that's helpful.
Suits as related to the structures themselves or the regulations or the procedures?
I would say more the regulations, cleanliness, the instrumentation, and that was not 100% fully clear, but I was told there were ongoing, and certainly, and the state hadn't even inspected. And so they were saying, well, maybe it was up to the city's.
Oh, I see, for sure, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
There was one question about, the settlement agreement. It was that they received 80,000 was that amount. Representative Cross.
What I wanted to ask, you tell me about the settlement. You may have said this and maybe I didn't hear you. What was the period of time to reach the settlement? Was there ever a time period to reach this settlement?
Well, that's a good question that I did not read that in any of my information.
Okay, then the next question I want to ask you, I'm getting conflicting terms here that I want you to clarify with me. We're using the term survey team and inspection. Okay, did an inspection team go through there? Or did a survey team, or maybe nobody went through there?
Okay, so it's a medical survey team. It's a survey team is a term for the proper and appropriate individuals to go through. So if it's a construction matter, they send construction. If it is medical or staff, or they send the appropriate people.
Did they send the appropriate people at the end as part of the settlement, or do you know, man? Maybe you did say, I don't know.
Well, that then goes into the licensure as to did they do the appropriate requirements then to issue the license.
Okay, and it is documented. Am I hearing you right?
Well, that's a good question. We'll have to, when we get to the licensure, let's look at that, okay?
Thank you.
That's good. Yes?
There's,
Go ahead.
the total amount was actually, 145,000 was the settlement. There's two pieces of it. One piece for 80,000, one piece for 65.
Well, and I can answer that a little bit better.
And Representative Newman.
Yes, to Claire, I just wanted to verify that we are not taking any testimony on any of these allegations until after lunch. So at this point, this is like hearsay. This is what talk between us. This is just the direction of agenda. I just wanted to clarify, because we can all sit here and have our own opinions over what we think happened or didn't happen, or what's in a document or not in a document. I just wanted to clarify.
Well, for clarification, Representative Newman, the items that I read from are from the settlement agreement.
And is that settlement agreement available to all of us
Absolutely.
today?
Absolutely.
Has it been distributed to us?
Okay, Representative Gannon has it.
All right, is there a way that can be distributed to the entire committee so we're up on what we're discussing? And then also, I just wanted to clarify that we don't allow any testimony until after lunch, correct? So anything that's been said here, unless we can, stick to facts, I think we're kind of dealing with a lot of hearsay. And I just wanted to put that on record.
All right, thank you.
Representative Hickman.
I think that,
Proceed.
I think what we're doing is just get general information to fill our coffee cup so that we can have a better format questions for testimonies.
That's absolutely correct. Yeah, I mean, we're trying to lay this out so that way a lot of the committee members can be thinking of questions for the department rather than rushing them up and having them testify right away. We wanted to hash through some things and make sure the committee is aware of some of the things that we have the questions for the department.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, great. The next one of the items, again, that we're going to look at this afternoon will be the state of Missouri funding, the funding that we place into Planned Parenthood. And I think that that was one of the documents that was put into your email and distributed to you. Planned Parenthood is enrolled as a Missouri Medicaid provider for family planning and women's health services. So we definitely receive funds from the state of, from the federal government and distribute them. Right now, those funds, I think, are segregated into pharmaceutical payments, physician services, the managed care, and women's health services. I asked if there was a specific line item for family planning to zero in on, and there is not in the state of Missouri at this time in our budget. Is that House Bill 11? House Bill 11. So we will look at, I have some questions about that this afternoon. I have some witnesses to testify. Another area, a little bit maybe, it seems like it's maybe a little bit off base, but it is the stem cell research that is done in the state of Missouri. Per the Missouri Constitution, an initiative petition in 2006, a stem cell research annual form was created. And that form is used for it requires any hospital, institution, or other entity or other person conducting human embryonic stem cell research to prepare an annual report stating the nature of the human embryonic stem cells used, the purpose of the research conducted, and certifying that they are in compliance with the requirements pertaining to who may conduct such research. And we asked the Secretary of State for copies of the last since 2007, and they had on record that they provided to us Washington University in St. Louis. And I think that is the only one that I have. And the reason I wanted to take a little bit of a look at that is because the purpose of the research is, of course, to see what we can develop to help us in our areas of disease as human beings. And I think I'm kind of forward thinking on this a little bit. If we want to be sure that we can apply the same standard to human tissue or embryonic tissue, then we'll want to know what these statutes say and why they're in place and what we may want to do. Currently in the state of Missouri, Article 3, this statute, which is Section 38D, it says that the research shall be done safely and ethically. There's going to be no cloning, no of the bioblasts that are produced solely for stem cell research, and none that are taken over the age of 14 days after they begin dividing, and that there's no purchase or sale of the eggs. So what I think commonly, out of what I've read, I understand, is that most of the time in in vitro, thank you. In vitro fertilization, there are more eggs produced and fertilized than necessary for the implantation for pregnancy. And so those eggs, per permission of the mother, may be donated for the research. We also have a federal standard on that, the National Institute of Health, and we have federal regulations. In place are already federal regulations on tissue research, so we may want to take a look at that. I won't say that now. Okay, so we're gonna take a look at that, ask some questions about that, see who knows more about stem cell research and the compliance to what Article 3 of the Constitution has to say about that. Yes, Representative Howard,
To inquire.
you may.
Okay, in the knowledge that we are talking about where we proceed and the planning, and we've heard of the discussion or the term testimony being used. Will there be a swearing-in process in this hearing so we get the truth from everyone speaking?
No.
Okay.
Not at this time. We might be able to change that between now to
Okay. And may I ask two more questions?
Yeah.
As far as definitions, embryonic tissue, will there be someone speaking with, I'd like to say, an unbiased point of view, if there is such thing in this, but to define the the stages of embryonic cells? So to determine the days of pre-differentiation of these cells. And will MMAC be here? Missouri Medicaid Audit and Compliance Group.
They, Dr. Parks is, here's our list. Okay, yeah, Dr. Parks will be here.
Okay, he's
Part of
not
that.
MMAC, he's the Medicaid director.
Okay, and, you know, this is our first hearing. I think those are very good points, and,
Okay.
and really, probably this particular area of stem cell and fetal tissue, we're just beginning to delve into that, but I like your recommendations, and we'll get that, we'll make that
Thank you,
happen.
ma'am.
Okay. We're gonna go through the statutes, we're gonna go through the licensing process.
Representative Brad,
To inquire,
proceed.
just a quick question on the list of people testifying. Is there anyone from Attorney General Coster's office here?
No.
Is that it? Thank you.
Okay. So from the committee, I'd like to hear what your concerns are and what areas that you want to be sure that we do indeed cover. This is kind of an organizational point for us, get us all together. So let's go forward with that. Do you want me just to start at one end and go around, or do you want to just be recognized? Recognized, okay. Have I left anything out that you want to know about? Let's go out about it that way.
You did say that Department of Health can come, you did say when Department of Health comes, they're going to bring a list of the survey process and that type of thing. Is that correct?
I would hope so, and if not, we can certainly ask some questions.
Okay, thank you.
I basically late yesterday afternoon, so I appreciate the department's indulgence on this, but we did let them know that we would be asking about the funding, the Medicaid audit and compliance, the contracts, post-payment and reviews. So they're paid by Medicaid for the procedures. How do those become reviewed so that services delivered and services paid for? We have a record of that. We asked about the Title 10 family planning funding. On the issues of license, we asked the inspection of Planned Parenthood facilities in the state of Missouri, the survey team, and to tell us about the settlement agreement. And just in general, what they could tell us about the stem cell research registration annual form, what happens to that form, who looks at that form, who verifies what happens with the stem cell research. Anything else?
Representative Cross?
Can I just make a brief comment?
Sure.
You brought up Representative Franklin, number of areas. You know, we have so much time. My attitude is, let's just get started. Let's just work what you have. Because I think what's going to happen for members of this committee, other questions will probably arise. So the only thing I know right now, if I could suggest, just get started and go with what we have.
All right, let me confer here with Representative.
In 2007, it changed. Like we did in 2007, legislators changed the ordinance like against F7. We love you, Vito. What? Easy, Rudy. Easy.
Some days more than others.
I do.
I had an unofficial little break there. We're going to go, in order to answer the question. Yeah.
All right, just for the committee, if there's any information that any of the committee members want that they do not have, feel free to come up to my LA and let them know, and we'll make sure we get that to you when we come back in at 2. And also check your inbox because we email a whole bunch of information out.
Did you bring your laptop? Okay, great. Well, and then to get back to Representative Cross's suggestion, we are noticed here to meet from 10 until 12:30 to recess and then come back at 12:30 or come back at 2 o'clock, 2 p.m. So that's where we're at with that. So let's go ahead and run through the statutes that pertain to this topic. We're going to look at 188. That kind of in its entirety deals with this issue. The title of that that falls into Chapter 7, which is Public Health and Welfare. All right.
Which one was that again? I'm sorry.
188.
180.
I think the first one that we're going to come across is going to cause us a little bit of concern is 188.080. Give you all a chance to
subsection number?
It's 188.080.
Was it 080 or
080.
Thank you.
Everybody found their way to that. It is abortion performed by other than a physician with surgical privileges at a hospital, which is a felony. So 188.080, any person who is not a physician who performs or induces or attempts to perform or induce an abortion on another is guilty of a Class B felony and upon conviction shall be punished as provided by law. Any physician performing or inducing an abortion who does not have clinical privileges at a hospital which offers obstetrical or gynecological care located within 30 miles of the location at which the abortion is performed or induced shall be guilty of a Class A misdemeanor and upon conviction shall be punishable by law. Okay, so does everybody grasp what this specifies? And I think as we look at the Planned Parenthood in Columbia, the second part of that would be the physician and their privileges. And then moving on. Yes, we're going to Section 188.010.1 starts out with, it is the intention of the General Assembly of the State of Missouri to grant the right of life to all humans, born and unborn, and to regulate abortion to the full extent permitted by the Constitution of the United States, decisions of the United States Supreme Court, and federal statutes.
If I could ask you to repeat that again, I'm
Sure.
sorry.
No, that's all right. It is section 188.010.1. Section 188.015.1 is a section of definitions. So it defines abortion, what that is, abortion facility. It has the contraception. The department, as referred to as the Department of Health and Senior Services. It has the age of the unborn, definition for that, medical emergency, a physician, reasonable medical judgment, unborn child, and viability. Section 188.0121 is the RU 486 administration requirements. And that is the what they call the medical abortion drug. Section 188.023.1 is reports of rape under the age of 18, sexual abuse required to report, and as pertained to one that might seek an abortion. 188.0251 is a hospitalization is required. Every abortion performed at 16 weeks of gestational age or later shall be performed in a hospital. So where's that at in our trimester? It's kind of in the third part of the second trimester at 16 weeks. So 14 weeks are can still be done in the surgical center. Is that right? Thank you. What's for you? We do have this this booklet that gives you the ages and the photos. All right. Then section 188.027.1 is the consent, voluntary and informed. It's required. A portion of that is the physician who performs or induces the abortion or qualified professional has to inform the woman orally, in writing, and in person. That's listed out. The medical risks have to be given, the alternatives. It's quite a lengthy chapter. It spells out what to do for the medical emergency, written materials, emergency rules. Section 188.028.1 has to do with minors and abortion requirements and procedures. Section 188.0029 is relative to before a physician performs an abortion on a woman, he has reason to believe is carrying an unborn child of 20 or more weeks. It's a requirement to see if the child is viable or doing well, very well.
Representative Hubert.
I think it is replaced by.
What is it replaced with?
Here. Thank you. Okay, and then, section 188.030 is showing that beginning in January 1st, 2017. I think this replaces probably that section. Two follows that. And then section 188.031.1, next friend defined for purpose of the procedure for the minor to obtain an abortion. Section 188.035.1, death of a child aborted alive, and that's deemed as murder in the second degree. Section 188.361 is prohibited abortions, those done with the intent to use fetal organs or tissue for transplant, experiments, or consideration. Any exceptions? Call out. Yes, representative. Okay.
Isn't this the section that this is all about? This section 188.038, is that not the section that this whole meeting is about? I mean, the rest of it's all there, and it's been there for a long time, but this is the issue at hand, I think. Okay, just checking.
And then 0.88 or 188.037.1, that's experimentation with fetus or child aborted alive. Section. Do we think that? Well, I have two different numbers. Well, this is the same. Yeah, with both of them, but they're two different sections. Two sections. 188.039.1 is the 72-hour waiting period. The medical exception definition, informed consent, and department to provide model consent forms, waiting period, restraint, or enjoin. 188.43.1 is medical malpractice insurance. And this is another one that we probably want to get back to, is 188.047.1, sample tissue authorized pathologist to file report, copies furnished. And 188.052.1, physician's report on abortion, post-abortion care with the Department of Health and Senior Services to publish their statistics. And then 188.055.1 are the forms that are necessary. And 188.065.1 is the license can be revoked. Lays out that information. 188.075.1 is the violations of 188.010 to 188.085, the Class A misdemeanor. And are there any other statutes that 188. 80.080, we've talked a little bit about that already. Abortion performed by other than a physician with surgical privileges at a hospital. 188.100.1 is definitions or regulations for abortion. 188.205.1 is the use of public funds. Prohibited. And that's also in 215.1. And 188.325.1 is program established, services provided, matching monies to be sought, monies not to be used for abortion or abortion services. And that's for the Missouri Alternatives to Abortion Services money. Okay, and that's all of those. There's a couple other statutes that we need to look at. Okay. Okay. And you've mentioned, okay, Representative Haley has mentioned those, so. Okay. Okay, you're ready to use it? Okay. So members, do you have any questions? Is there anything else that you need? And if not, we're going to recess until 2 o'clock. Yes, sir.
See that? I'm really used to that 215.
Okay. That is that the one that's for alternative to abortion centers?
Yeah, I think it was. We were trying to look at that.
Okay. The number on that again?
I think it's 215.1.
We have it.
No, that's correct.
Okay. Yeah.
What do you want to know? About it's talking about the money.
All right, yeah, 188.205, it says shall be unlawful for any public funds to be expended for the purpose of performing or assisting an abortion, not necessarily to save the life of the mother, or for the purpose of encouraging or counseling a woman to have an abortion, not necessarily to save her life.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with that, then we shall recess. We'll see you back at 2 p.m. Thank you.